Dale Earnhardt, Daytona 500, 2001, final lap, he obviously crashes and ends up dying. What do you recall from watching that crash?
Yeah, we were at home, just watching the race, watched it to the end, watched the crash, turned it off and left the house. It didn't look like anything abnormal or any harder crash than you've ever seen before. So, Delaney and I don't remember exactly what we were doing that day, but we turned the race off and left, and next thing you know, your phone is just blowing up. And obviously at that point we knew that something was wrong, and then I called and got the details, and then a lot of the people from RCR met up at who is now the Vice President of Competition at RCR, Mike Dillon's house, who was my teammate in the Xfinity Series at that particular time. So, yeah, there was a lot of things that happened in a really short amount of time. When Dale died, the company, nobody really knew where to go. So, I think it was the Wednesday night of the next week. I got a call from Richard as I was laying in bed, and he asked me to come to the office, and it was Richard Childress and Kevin Hamlin, who was the crew chief at the time, Bobby Hutchins, who was the team manager at the time, and I'll never forget walking in. I've been in Richard's office a few times, but that night was different. Richard was sitting behind his desk, looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days, which he probably hadn't. Kevin Hamlin had a bottle of Jack Daniels in a cup, and just sitting there, and he'd obviously had plenty of cups of Jack Daniels, and they were just trying to figure out what they wanted to do, and they asked me to drive the car. And at that point, it was really about just trying to keep the company afloat and survive, and not just have the emotions of the whole situation shut the company down. So for me, I wasn't as attached to it to Dale as obviously all those guys were. I'd only been there for a year. And you come into a situation, you're like, well, you just got to do what you got to do.
And you'd never raced in the Sprint Cup before?
No, I'd never raced in the Sprint Cup car. The ironic thing about the whole thing was we had just signed America Online. I was going to run 7 races that year, and then the next year be full-time on the Sprint Cup circuit. And my first race was actually supposed to be Atlanta. We had actually been there to test and run the car that we were going to race, and so there's just a lot of weird things that happened in that time. So that Wednesday night, I told him I would drive the car, and went through the next couple days. Just everybody's just kind of not really knowing what to do, and
you come home and you
we
tell
had
your wife.
We had a lot of things going on. Yeah, I told my wife,
and she thought it was just for one race.
Right. So I told my wife, and we went to Rockingham that week, and we were actually in the process of getting married. And then we took over the Dale's car, and we went to Rockingham and ran the first race.
What do you recall from walking into the press tent at Rockingham?
Yeah, that's still to this day the most overwhelming situation that I've ever walked into, because we were in the middle of a practice session which was then the Busch Series, and Richard pulled me out of the car to take me to the press session. Walked in the tent, and there was hundreds and hundreds of people and flash bulbs, and it was a really, really dark, gloomy day in this huge white tent. And I'll just never forget sitting down and just seeing all the media and photographers and everything that was there that day.
And you won your first race in just your third start. You talk about a life-changing period.
Yeah.
Not only do you get the Sprint Cup ride, you take over for
Right.
Dale Earnhardt, and then you get married in the same couple weeks.
Yeah, so I ran my first race at Rockingham. We get on finally get on home and get on the plane and get to Vegas, and it was really almost a blessing in disguise, because it really allowed the guys on the teams and Richard and a lot of people to kind of get their minds off of everything for a little while. And so we flew out and had the wedding, and I think Delana ran down the aisle as fast as she could run. Went out and ran the Cup race on Sunday and got my first top 10. I think we finished 14th the first race. I think we finished 7th or 8th at Las Vegas. And we go to Atlanta the next week and win the first race. And you know, there were so many things going on at that particular time that I honestly couldn't sit here and tell you probably anything that happened on that particular weekend. It was a big moment for me to win my first race, but that was almost non-existent with everything that was going on, just for the fact that you know, it was a really, really big moment for RCR to continue forward and know that there was still life in the team to be able to win a race and start that healing process to move forward.